Hey everybody, it's Tracy, and I wanted to talk about Canadian MSB registration. So I've talked about US MSB registration quite a bit, and it's sort of an automatic thing in terms of registration, right? Hence the name registration as opposed to application. And it can be done very quickly, like 3 to 5 days, but it imparts upon you, the entirety of the US AML KYC regulatory regime. So there's a great deal of obligation going forward, but the ability to get an MSB registration isn't that difficult. So Canada's a little bit different. So what in Canada you can expect like a 30 to 45 day review, and there's actually some indicia of an application, right? And much like the difference between the federal government and the states in the US and the federal government in Canada and the individual provinces, the view of cryptocurrency and what defines a money transmitter is broader at the federal level. So many of the things that, like for instance, you would do in the United States, such as like being an OTC trader or something like that, which requires an MSB registration because it's included in the definition of a money transmitter at the federal level, is the same in Canada. So OTC traders and the like are deemed to be money transmitters and have to go through the process of registration, which again is a little more involved, and there's more documentation. Whereas in the US you sort of have to have the registration, but you don't have to show it. You have to prepare all these policies and procedures, mostly related to AML and KYC, as part of the process. But the story doesn't end there because you have the individual provinces. And what's nice about it, vis-a-vis the US, is obviously there is far fewer provinces than there are states. So if you require a provincial money transmitter license, is really dependent upon what you're doing vis-a-vis crypto or money transfer and what province you're operating in, and also the nature of the activity and the different laws that relate. So for a crypto exchange in Ontario, there really isn't a dedicated framework for licensing of crypto exchanges, but you still have to be a federal level money service business, whereas in British Columbia, there is, and to operate in BC, you would need a money transmitter level license at the provincial level, which unto itself is a much longer process, like 3 to 4 months, and various degrees of documentation and bonding and all sorts of stuff that you have to put together. So it's kind of mix and match, and it depends where you are. And people think, it's not a very populous nation, right? It's big. It's G7. It's relatively wealthy, but it's not a wildly populous nation. So when you look at it, you think of what provinces really make the most sense, just like you would in the US. Do you need a crypto license for Idaho? It's all relative to how many customers you think you're going to get. But generally speaking, as a general postulate, if you want to call it that, the federal level money service registration in Canada is far more beneficial for crypto exchange and related activities than the MSB is in the United States, because of the lack of regulation at the provincial level versus very entangled and somewhat confusing registration at the state level in the US. So it's harder to get, but ultimately more valuable from the perspective of just that country as an MSB. So that is the Canadian regime at a glance. If you have any questions, definitely hit me up, adam@adamtracy.io, and I'll talk to you next time. Cheers.